and welcome. And today I'm joined by Bettina Schaller, President of the World Employment Confederation, to talk about how staffing and the workforce solutions sector can help businesses get back on their feet while navigating the new normal world of work. So welcome, Bettina.
Wonderful to be with you, Fiona, and everybody else. Hello.
Excellent. So as government support schemes wind down, it's likely we'll see more permanent job losses, and many workers will need retraining and reskilling before being able to find work. So how can the staffing sector support the transition from declining sectors to those that are growing?
Well, Fiona, excellent question. And maybe let me first take you back to, the early days when the crisis happened, because of course, first it was a little bit of a shock, but then it was amazing to witness how quickly and how many companies of the staffing sector actually got active and started to, act in this transition piece that you just alluded to. And I really wanted to highlight some of the examples, such as, for instance, in the Netherlands, where members of the Dutch Federation, ABU, for example, had a great initiative called Met Elkaar, which I believe is called or stands for Together, where they looked at the workers, notably in the hospitality sectors, and made sure that they were obviously reallocated to either supermarkets, into the agricultural sector, or hospitals, the healthcare sector as well. Then we've got fantastic examples such as in Ireland. Our Irish friends, the National Recruitment Federation, came up with a superb initiative called Keep Ireland Working, with more than 30 agencies, for example, that participated there. Again, from accounting to healthcare to fashion, drivers, admin, logistics. So a lot of workers that were transitioned and reallocated from one sector to another. There's many more. There's the Australians. There's with the Jobs Finder in Queensland. There's examples in India, for instance, as well. And then, of course, there's the examples like in France, for instance, of programs where we work together as an industry with the government, such as in France, for instance, on Mobilité Emploi. So around, that role that we play, it's been absolutely crucial, and we know it will continue to be. Now, you've mentioned specifically skilling and upskilling. So that one as well. We have, as a major contribution during this crisis, been reskilling and upskilling agency workers specifically, and actually one mechanism, if I can say so, that we've been able to use there are the actual training schemes that had been developed in the sector for agency workers, where there's even been dedicated funds for those agency workers. That's always one of the issues. And there, just as an example, we've had temp training in Switzerland, we've had Formatemp in Italy, or Acto in France. As a last piece, maybe on this transition question of yours, I want to highlight that, and that's going to be very important now as we hopefully, really start to phase out of this situation, is all the support that we're giving in terms of career guidance services. So helping people in the transition in redeployment or outplacement services.
That's fantastic to hear. It's really good initiatives there. One of the most enduring legacies of the past year is the renewed focus on social inequality, which sadly the health crisis and the resulting economic downturn have only heightened. How can the workforce solutions sector help to drive social inclusion and facilitate access to the labour market, particularly for groups most affected, such as the young people, women, Black and ethnic minorities, and people with disabilities?
First of all, such an important question, Fiona. And first of all, I mean, that rise of inequalities and the polarization as we see it is really worrisome. It's really worrisome. It's something that we need to pay incredible attention to. There's really winners out there, but there's losers out there now in the labor market. And it's obviously those losers that we have to worry about. And that's why this question about emphasizing that anything that promotes access to work and that promotes inclusion needs to be really fostered. And of course, again, the sector of private employment services of staffing companies has a proven track record exactly in making sure that everybody gets access to the labor market. Everybody, meaning, and you mentioned youth. We know on global average that 1/5 of agency workers are students. We know that we are the stepping stone. And we know that now, coming out of the crisis, it will be key to ensure that there are these pathways where you maybe test a job, where businesses might not want to hire immediately full time. Well, then they should be reverting back again to staffing companies. You mentioned women as well. Again, the sector that we're talking about here, well, the share of women is much higher than of the overall employed population. And then, very importantly, it's already been a topic before the crisis. It will be even more now. It's people, with a disability. It's elderly workers. It's people that might be, again, on the edge of the labor market. And here I'm thinking as well of fantastic programs, for instance, in the United States, people with a criminal background. So agencies really are used to picking up people, focusing on their skills. If the skills are not there, well, working on re and upskilling, and then making sure that this access into the labor market is given. So all of that in this context of really providing access, and of course banking on the workers and making sure that they can build on security, that they get benefits, and that they're having those opportunities.
That's great. And Staffing Industry Analysts has recently published a report on diversity and inclusion opportunities and statistics around the staffing sector. And we're due to publish a report, I believe, in next month on the sort of people really making a difference in this area in the workforce solutions sector.
Well, I can't wait to see that one.
Yeah. The other area where the staffing industry has always been particularly strong is in compliance. And Charles Cameron, the RCSA CEO and WC Vice President, said the crisis has intensified the focus on compliance. So how do you think the staffing sector should be helping clients to manage workforce-related risks, particularly new challenges around health and safety with the COVID-19 virus?
Mm-hmm. Well, what the crisis really has shown is that this risk element that you've just alluded to has increased much more. And because of that, because of the fact that, for employers, we've shifted into what we call this stop and go economy, because of the fact that you need agile workforce solutions, because of the fact that there is this uncertainty. Well, this element of having to work with very reliant partners that are able to mitigate that risk for you and to address that risk for you is even higher. Again, we're moving from just-in-time staffing to just-in-case staffing. And for employers, it's really, really important to be able to access the right staff, obviously with the right skills. So that's a big component. Our point, though, and we know that's what speaks to the market out there as well, is that it can't just be anybody, of course. There needs to be this guarantee almost of ethical, compliant recruitment value chains, right? It's absolutely key for any business out there, as they need to look after their own reputation management strategies as it is. So you really need to ensure as a business to have the right procedures in place, to work with the right partners, to make sure that the whole treatment in that value chain happens in the right way. And maybe there's one specific example that really, I think, underscores that, or one angle, which is the angle of all matters relating to health and safety at work. It is absolutely clear that no business today can afford not to comply or actually apply measures for the safety of their workforce at the workplace, or wherever that worker is executing her or his tasks. And this is where the staffing industry has very early in the crisis gotten together, build protocols together, build mechanisms to ensure that these elements are being put on the table in the right way. So again, working with companies that are compliant, that look after the benefits, the health and safety of workers is key. And this is notably what the members of World Employment Confederation, of course, bring to the equation.
Yeah, and I think particularly here in Europe, compliance is growing ever more important because governments are focusing on, there's new legislation coming in at the end of this year across Europe on whistleblowing, and also there's a renewed focus on supply chain transparency as well coming down the line, I believe, maybe this year or next. So
absolutely. So it's not just a nice to have, it's really a must. And there's the ethical component, but then there's also, as you say, there's just the whole business environment is actually asking for the guarantees as well on following those measures.
Absolutely. So finally, turning to new ways of working and the rise in work being obtained through talent platforms. You've said when speaking about platform work, Bettina, that new technology can be a force for good, but policymakers need to guide its application to the world of work. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you meant by that?
I think I remember that statement, and the context was really around the fact that platform work is one of the hottest topics for policymakers right now. Just to name a few in the world we're looking at, there's obviously, country level initiatives or thinking, but, we've seen the consultation on platform work that was triggered by the European Commission. We see that the flagship report of the UN Organization of Work, which is the International Labour Organization, was on platform work. It was published just recently. We see, of course, across actually the world, in select countries, we see courts that have started to rule on platform work. So, a lot is happening, but many questions remain. And so, what we'd like to bring to the table is, of course, we might have some of the answers, but actually very specific to one type of platform work, which is online platform work. And so part of the answers, very humbly, stems obviously from the experience that we have as a sector, and it stems of, the knowledge we have about the nature of our of our services and solutions, of course. And so one of the one of the knowledge, I guess, or certainties we have, and when I say certainty, the light goes on, is that online talent platforms are really just another way of obviously connecting people with work. So, platform work comes with the same expectations of decent working conditions for workers and a level playing field for businesses. And that's why we actually say, if it's a same service, a same regulation applies, which brings back into the pictures what we just talked about around standards, around how you conduct your business, around committing to principles, etc. So the piece and the contribution we like to make here again is that knowledge we have, picking up on the online talent platform topic specifically, and then underlining, if you have a service that is already identified, it happens to be delivered by a platform, that's fine. But basically, make sure that you apply the same regulation, the same conditions and standards, and then that could maybe ease that part of the discussion for regulators a little bit. But it's going to be a hot one, and I hope to be back with you discussing that one day.
Yes, I think you're right. I've just finished my legal update for Europe this month, and there were several cases that touched on this issue about platform work and how they fit into the regulation that exists. And there was one in the UK just December, I believe, where it wasn't directly dealing with a talent platform as such, but it was dealing with an organisation that made introductions of independent contractors to clients, and they hadn't realised that there were regulations that covered that particular type of arrangement. And they already exist. They've been with us since 1970s. So yes, I think if regulators start to see these services being delivered that are the same but just in a different format, one hopes that they will also try and make sure that those companies comply.
Absolutely. With that said, it's also the time now just to look at regulation, right? Not to just keep on carrying over rules and legislation that really comes from the last century and the last industrial revolution as it is. But sometimes it is as simple as saying, okay, let's test it. This actually still works, so let's not reinvent the wheel on that one. Maybe there's enough other areas we need to look at, but maybe on that one not.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Bettina. It's been fascinating chatting to you and hearing your thoughts on these topics. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
Be very safe. Bye-bye.